Best of 2024. These are coins that I thought really stood out in 2024. There are probably much more, but we only have a short show here, and so we can't go through all of them. So at the beginning of 2024, which always starts out with the Triton sale, which is going to be happening very soon again, this very rare, but what's funny is there's another Pharnakes, or Nectanebo, sorry, there's another Nectanebo coin coming up in this year's Triton sale, which is funny. So they had one last year, and they've got another one coming up this year.
Apparently it worked out well for them last year.
So yeah, this is the last pharaoh of the Egyptians before the Ptolemies took it over, before Ptolemy the First took it over. And the pharaohs, the Egyptians, didn't issue coins. So this is actually one of the first coins that were ever issued by a pharaoh, and they were actually made for the Greek mercenaries. So they would pay them to help fight for them. And so it's the only ancient coin that I'm aware of that actually has a hieroglyphic on the reverse of the coin. And so the hieroglyphic here means good gold. This one sold, I believe, for 200K hammer. So had a pedigree back to 1955. Really interesting coin. They're very sought after. They are extremely rare, but it's funny that another one's coming up here too. So anyway.
Extremely rare though.
Extremely rare. Go to the next slide. The famous Eid Mar, but it's not the Eid Mar you would think of. This, also showing up in that same Triton sale in January of 2024, was probably the finest foray. And so we know this is a foray because you see that hole there on the obverse? You can see the copper core coming through, which means this was a copper core with the silver wash. And so these were contemporary forgeries at the time. It is believed that Brutus or his moneyers at the time were actually trying to spread the silver thin, and it's possible that some forays were actually struck with official dies at the time.
That would explain the similarity to the actual coin.
There are a lot of forays that are very barbarous, meaning that they don't look like any of the official ones. And so they were literally being faked at the time. Most forays are contemporary fakes, meaning that they were made at the same time period, but made to look full silver, but were in reality not. And that's why a lot of coins ended up being test cut or had banker's marks, because they were checking to make sure that they were silver all the way through and not contemporary fakes trying to hide their copper center. This one actually probably the highest price ever paid for a foray at $75,000 hammer. Forays back in the day when Eid Mars used to be $50,000 and you could get a foray for under $10,000. These days forays are a little harder to get at that level, but this one's pretty fantastic, I have to say. It was originally sold by Sternberg in 1985, so I had a little bit of a pedigree, but a really interesting coin and for sure the finest of the foray type. The next slide, we have really a fantastic Vespasian aureus.
Yeah.
This is most likely from the Bosco Reale hoard from 1895, which means that it would have been during the eruption of Pompeii, during the volcano eruption. The clay actually got seeped into the coins, and so you get this reddish color. And so that only happened from the eruption of the volcano Vesuvio at the time. And so they're very sought after for that reason, because you get the Pompeii and also the pedigree, obviously, as well. This was also sold by Ratto in 1952, and it sold for 130,000 hammer. Strong price, but fantastic coin on both sides. This also sold in that January 2024 sale. But a great coin. If we go on to the next slide, many of these coins we did talk about during the year when they were coming up. And so here's one that came up during the summer in C&G auction 126 in May. It's actually springtime, I guess, 2024. And this was money before money became money. And this was a Cyprus from the Bronze Age, 1600 to 1000 BC. They call it an oxide because it looks like the shape of an ox hide, if they were to carve it off. And these were used as treasury pieces, essentially, during the Bronze Age. And you can see how big it is. There's my foot next to it. So
yeah, but you shop in the kids section for your shoes.
So I knew who bought it, and so it happened to show up, and I was able to get a picture of it as it got unboxed. Now it's on a nice mount, and it's beautiful, but really heavy, really big. This one sold for $170,000. Huge.
Was this repaired on that one corner?
No.
That's just kind of, it's corrosion?
Yeah, corrosion, or it may have had an attachment of some sort at the time, but definitely not damage. And so I believe there's a hoard of these in a museum in Greece somewhere. There's not a lot of them in private hands. I think this was the first or second time one had ever been offered in complete version. There are fragments that are offered. They don't come up very often.
I guess they are. It's hard to imagine that they survived in whole. But
yeah, I mean, they are I
not
mean, it's
rock. They
right.
look like they're rock, but they're not. They're metal.
I mean, they're solid copper.
They're not going to break apart real
No,
easy.
not real easily. It's a hefty piece. There's no doubt about it. So moving on to the next one. I love this piece. Still love it. This is an ancient die, counterfeiter's die, probably produced in the 3rd or 2nd century BC of an Athens tetradrachm. It brought 32,500 hammer. I thought that was pretty reasonable. Expensive for a counterfeit die, for sure. But to my knowledge, I've never seen one with an Athens tetradrachm come up before. So,
And a really good one, too.
Yep. It had really beautiful. People ask, like, why was the top so clean and perfect, but the rest wasn't? Well, they wanted to leave the incrustation so people would believe that it was real. Next slide, which very, very cool coin. This was actually sold at Nomos, auction 32 in June of 2024, and it was lot 494. This sold for 28,000 Swiss francs, hammer. Very, very, very rare type. Phoenician of Artus. It's an unknown king, but here you have Baal swimming, and he's holding 2 dolphins.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got him by the tails.
He's got him by the tails, yeah. And on the reverse, you have a Phoenician galley ship, and underneath you have a swimming griffin. Didn't know griffins swam.
No, I didn't know they had fins.
So very rare coin, very cool. One you would not expect to see. I've never seen that type before, so of course it drew my interest and why I put it as the greatest of 2024. And that's going to be true of the next coin, which I think is one I've never seen before. It's a coin of Kyrene, which I have seen before, but with the silphium plant, which was a plant used for medicine and other purposes, and it grew all over the Kyrene coastline. And so they thought it was extinct, but now they believe it's sort of a type of fennel plant. But what's really interesting here is I've never seen one with the gazelle on the obverse eating one of the leaves.
That gazelle is straight up on its hind legs doing it too.
And these things did grow tall, and so that makes sense. And so here, the artist was just representing what they saw in real life. And on the reverse here, we have Zeus Ammon, which is basically Zeus Ammon means Zeus, and then you have Ammon, which is the Egyptian representation. So they're mixing the gods between Egypt and Greece together. And that represents the horn that you see around Zeus's head. You do get these on Lysimachus tetradrachms as well, where you get the horn on coins of Lysimachus, which is Alexander being represented as Zeus Ammon, essentially. And so very, very cool coin. This sold in Nomos as well. Sold for 110,000 Swiss franc. If we move on to the next coin, fantastic sestertius of Hadrian. And on the reverse, it actually says in the excerpts there, you can see Britannicus. And so when Hadrian visited Britain, he visited the troops, and here he is speaking to the troops. There was a very famous Hadrian coin, a sestertius. I think it was the first $1 million ancient coin ever to sell back in the early 2000s. And it had this exact same style type. And so this kind of rivals that one in a lot of ways. So this one brought 600,000. A lot of buck for sestertius.
Not surprisingly, though.
But it's a fantastic coin.
It really is.
So stylistically on both sides, just fantastic coin in every way. This sold in NAC. It was part of the Cope collection. It was put on by C&G, NAC, and NGSA. And so this sold in May of 2020.
And this coin really survived. Really just wonderful.
Yep. Go on to the next coin. We have a full silver Eid Mar. This is now the most expensive Eid Mar ever to sell in silver. This one brought 950,000 Swiss francs hammer, which with the juice is probably closer to $1.2 million. This one had everything: centering, quality, pedigree. It goes back to, it was ex-Neville, 1922. Fantastic coin in every possible way. It doesn't have the typical surface roughness that a lot of the coins from the 90s that came out have. And it has a fantastic pedigree. It's really a wonderful coin and probably worth every penny. It probably should have gone for more, but it didn't. And so my guess is if this coin came up again today, it would have gone for over 2 million. So
it's approaching the aureus.
Yes. So if you go on to the next coin, another coin that sold during the same NAC sale in 2024, fantastic Syracuse Dekadrachm of Kimon. You can see the signature fully, K-I-M-A, on the dolphin. Really, it was part of the Kunstfreud sale from 74. The Kunstfreud sale was the sale that broke the bank or broke the market at the time. So in 74, this fantastic collection from Kunstfreud came up and record prices across the board, and it crashed the market. And all ancient coins went down after the Kunstfreud sale. And so everybody always thinks there's going to be another Kunstfreud coming up, and it hasn't happened yet. but a lot of collectors love owning coins from Kunstfreud for that reason. Famous sale, famous collection. This one brought 700,000 Swiss francs. This I would consider a mint state coin. This is what you'd have to pay for a Dekadrachm that's mint state that hardly ever come up. And so perfect on both sides, wonderful signature, great surfaces, both on the obverse and reverse. So you're approaching $1 million here. And so it's far less than the typical 50 to 80,000 for a really high grade Dekadrachm that would wow most people if they held it. Moving on, this is the famous Augustus aureus, which they call the heifer aureus because it represents the bulls. Statues produced during the Greek period, then taken to Augustus's temple in Rome and put on display. I actually bought this for a client. We paid 600,000 hammer. Strong price, but fantastic and very rare coin. Has a pedigree back to 1949 and a very sought after, and they don't come up very often with that reverse type. So very, very popular. And then closing out the year, we have this fantastic Trajan sestertius of the Circus Maximus. And this green patina is natural from thousands of years of production or being underground. And so this is a very desirable coin on both sides. It was part of the Peter Bowie collection that NAC just sold in auction 150 in December. So it just happened. It brought 140,000 Swiss francs. Really fantastic coin on both sides of a very, very famous reverse type.